The United States spent $4 billion, hired the most expensive coach in American soccer history, and built the biggest home World Cup ever staged. And with one result on June 14th, a nation of 26 million people just made all of it feel fragile. Australia beat Turkey 2-0. Clean, controlled, completely without apology. And the moment the final whistle blew in Guadalajara, something shifted inside Group D that no American pundit, no bracket prediction, and no pre-tournament confidence had prepared the United States for, because this was not supposed to happen this way. After the World Cup draw placed Australia alongside the United States in Group D, the reaction from American football media was immediate and, from an Australian perspective, deeply costly. One clip circulated for months across Australian social media. In it, a commentator looked at Group D and described Australia with a single word: layup. The easiest shot in basketball, applied to a nation that reached the quarterfinals of the last World Cup they attended by beating Denmark and eliminating Argentina. On penalties, the United States is in panic, and the warning was always there, it just came from a direction nobody expected. Nestori Irankunda, who scored twice against Curaçao in Australia's final home warm-up match, and who at 20 years old is one of the most dangerous young forwards in this tournament, said something after that game that tells you everything about where this squad's mentality sits. He said they want to achieve something that has never been achieved before. He said no one has belief in them. Then he said they have belief in themselves. That combination, the dismissal from outside and the conviction from within, is exactly what produces the kind of football Australia played against Turkey on June 14th. 2 goals. No reply. Turkey arriving at their first World Cup in 24 years and leaving their opening match with nothing. The Australian performance was not a fluke. It was not a lucky night. It was the direct expression of a style that head coach Tony Popovic has built methodically and deliberately. High-pressing, aggressive, front-footed, refusing to take a backward step regardless of the opponent, the occasion, or what anyone outside the squad believes they are capable of. Defender Cameron Burgess, who clashed physically with Chris Richards in the October 2024 friendly between the two sides, described it in terms that Popovic would recognize. He said the aggressive approach does not come from being the underdog. It comes from the style of football being their identity. It comes from every decision being made with confidence. No backing down is instilled in their culture. And that culture is what walked into the Estadio Akron in Guadalajara on June 14th and produced a 2-0 win in front of a watching football world. And here is where the United States' position becomes genuinely complicated. Because the USMNT also won their opening match, a 2-0 win over Paraguay. Clean sheet, goals scored, the result that the American football world needed to see on the biggest home stage the sport has ever given them. Mauricio Pochettino, hired with the backing of American billionaires specifically to deliver a World Cup performance that justified the investment, said before the tournament that he had only one measure of success: winning it. That is the expectation that has been set publicly. That is the standard the squad is being held to every time they take the field. But the USMNT also came into this tournament carrying something less visible than expectation. They came in carrying the weight of a 5-2 defeat to Belgium and a 2-0 loss to Portugal in their March friendlies. They came in with a squad evenly divided between 13 players who had previous World Cup experience and 13 first-timers who are experiencing this environment for the first time. They came in with Chris Richards, whose availability ahead of the Australia match has been a question nobody in the American camp has answered clearly. And they came in knowing that in October 2024, the last time these two sides met, Australia's Jordan Bowes scored first. Christian Pulisic was forced off the field after a challenge that ended his involvement in the match. And Richards himself was booked in a contest that the American defender described with a candor that suggested the physical edge of the rivalry is not going to soften on a World Cup stage. Now add the layer that exists entirely outside the stadium. Australia's Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, the government body responsible for informing Australian citizens about the safety of international travel, updated its advice for travel to the United States 3 separate times between April and May of 2025, 3 times in just over a month. The updates came in response to the Trump administration's increasingly strict border controls, reports of foreign nationals being detained and deported, and the confirmed practice of border officials inspecting electronic devices, email accounts, text messages, and social media profiles of arriving travelers. Australians were warned that being refused entry to the United States even once could create visa and border entry complications with other countries for the rest of their lives. Australia's largest travel agency, Flight Centre, downgraded its profit forecast by up to $100 million and cited U.S. developments explicitly. Its chief executive reported leisure travel from Australia to the United States down 16% in April alone compared to the same period The previous year, a drop that arrived despite the dollar being weaker against the Australian currency, making the trip mathematically cheaper than it had been before. The people who did not come were not making an economic calculation. They were deciding that the experience of entering the United States no longer felt predictable enough to risk. The Socceroos are traveling into a country that their own government has spent over a month warning its citizens to approach with increased caution. They are playing a World Cup match at Seattle Stadium against the co-host nation, in front of a crowd that will be overwhelmingly and loudly American, on a stage that the USMNT has publicly described as the most important footballing moment in the history of their program, and they already beat Turkey 2-0. The United States are not panicking in the way that word usually implies: frantic, disorganized, visibly shaken. The panic here is quieter and more specific than that. It is the panic of an organization that has managed expectation and pressure carefully throughout the build-up, now confronting the reality that the team they dismissed as a layup has announced themselves to this tournament with a result that demands to be taken seriously. It is the panic of a squad that knows what is at stake if this match goes wrong, that a loss to Australia here does not just complicate the group, it changes the entire tournament narrative for a program that has staked its credibility on delivering something historic on home soil. Pulisic, who has carried this team through more difficult nights than anyone, will need to be at his best. Not the Pulisic who was forced off the field in October 2024 after a crunching Australian challenge ended his involvement before the match was finished. Not the Pulisic who watched his team concede 5 goals to Belgium in March. Pulisic who scored in Qatar. The one who has 33 international goals and the fastest route to 50 goal contributions in American soccer history. That version. Because anything less than that version against this Australia side, organized, aggressive, tactically disciplined, and already carrying a result that has changed the temperature of this group entirely, will not be enough. The crowd in Seattle will be extraordinary. 69,000 people inside a stadium that has hosted some of the loudest football atmospheres in North America. The noise will be real. The emotion will be genuine. An entire nation watching its team in a World Cup on home soil for the first time in their history. That weight does not arrive quietly, and it does not sit lightly on the shoulders of the players carrying it. But here is the thing about that crowd and that atmosphere and that weight. Australia has already decided none of it belongs to them. They will cross the border from a country their own government has spent months warning its citizens about. 3 separate travel advisories updated between April and May. Warnings about border inspections, about electronic devices searched, about entry refused with consequences that last a lifetime. They will walk past all of that, into that stadium, into that noise, and play a side that still has not fully explained what happened in those March friendlies against Belgium and Portugal. They will do it with a 2-0 win already in their pocket. They will do it with Irankunda, 20 years old, already with 2 goals in this tournament and absolutely nothing to lose. And they will do it with the word layup sitting somewhere in the back of every single player's mind, placed there by someone who never imagined it would still be echoing 5 months later inside a World Cup stadium. Mission to wreck. The United States heard it. The American pundits heard it. The $4 billion and the most expensive coach in American soccer history heard it. And on June 19th in Seattle, in front of 69,000 people who came to see their team deliver something historic, the United States will have to answer it. The pitch will give the only answer that counts.